Welcome to Social Media Week. My name is, excuse me? Thank you. My name is Georgia Luchoa. I'm the director of the School of Emerging Media and Technology and Media Partnership for Social Media Week. I'm really happy to have you here. Thanks for coming. This session, this classroom is brought to you by and hosted by Google Plus, and this is Daniel Siever. He will walk you through the session and introduce you to the Hangouts. So welcome here, happy to have you, and I'll leave you to the class.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome everybody, and welcome everyone who's in the Hangout. You are in the Hangout right now, in case you didn't know. And hopefully over the next hour we'll have some fun talking about the evolution of Google Plus Hangouts, maybe some cool features that you haven't seen or heard of before. And we'll demo some stuff as we go along here. We have Nick Whitaker, who's also from Google, to talk about our Hangout in a Box kit, if you want to kind of do slightly higher-end production Hangouts. So first of all, I assume everybody here is on Google Plus? Yes? How many people have done a Hangout on air as a broadcast Hangout? Okay. To step back for a second, how many people know what a Hangout on air is? I want to make sure we kind of have a level of understanding here. Okay. So a few people who don't know. So let's just start at the top here before we get into some more sort of detailed features. Google Plus Hangouts are the ability for up to 10 people to participate in a video chat experience. The user interface looks something like this, where you have that film strip look at the bottom. The person who's talking fills that larger screen. There is the algorithm tries to understand who's talking the loudest, which surfaces that person in the big screen. That's a Hangout, which I do with my family, which anyone can do with their friends. We use them at work at Google all the time for video chat. That's a closed experience, okay? So a Hangout on air is the ability to broadcast your Hangout so that you still have that same kind of experience visually where people can join if you invite them in. But in this case, anybody can watch. So now you're broadcasting it on your Google Plus profile or Google Plus page. Today, it's up on my Google Plus profile, and I'm actually screen sharing the presentation so people can see the slides. They can post comments right now, although I won't be able to do 4 things at once to get their comments in, but people can watch it on my Google Plus profile. It's also live on my YouTube channel, and then you can actually embed the Hangout on air and put that on any website that you want. So now you're sort of multiplying where a Hangout experience can be. Again, it's still the same sort of user experience for people who are watching, up to 10 people who are in the Hangout itself, but a Hangout on air means that anybody can watch. Everybody with me so far? Yes? Yes? Okay, everybody stay awake here. Okay. A few things to remember. When you do a Hangout on air, it's going to ask you right at the top there, it's going to say, do you want to enable Hangouts on air? You would say yes. The people who join in are going to have to click to agree that they're being recorded because it's also recorded to your YouTube channel. It is recorded to your YouTube channel as well, yes. If you do a Hangout on air, it's recorded to your YouTube channel. And that takes time. I mean, this Hangout on air is being recorded right now. You just set it to be private. I mean, it actually defaults to being unlisted, I believe, right now. So if somebody did search for it, they could find it. But as soon as it's done, you can change it to be private, just like you would any other YouTube video. It's very easy to do. But when you click Enable Hangouts on Air, anybody you invite into that Hangout agrees that they won't use any copyright material, that they're okay with this being recorded and broadcast and that kind of thing. So it's always good to tell your participants to expect that when they join. You can even have somebody join by phone. It's free for US and Canada calls. There is an international rate. It comes out of your Google account. So that can be good if you just want to have a phone conversation with somebody. Or as a journalist, if you're inviting somebody in and you don't want to reveal their identity, you can actually do it that way. Yeah. Yep. Yep. It defaults to being a private Hangout in a sense. So yes, if you want to broadcast it, then you enable Hangouts on air. Yeah. Yeah. And again, the distinction between public and viewable by anyone. Public is a choice. When you go to invite people into the Hangout, you can make it public so that just like any rando can jump into your Hangout if they see that it's there. Yeah, I've done it before, and it's an interesting experience. You can feel free to try it out and see what happens. Correct, exactly. Yeah. Public means that anybody can jump into those Hangout seats, those 10 seats, whereas an on-air Hangout means that anybody can watch. Yep. Yep. Correct, correct, yes. So as long as they've got a Google Plus profile, they can participate in your Hangout on air. You simply send them an invitation through the Hangout. You just add them into the invite window, and they can jump into the Hangout. Yep, 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 yep. Absolutely, absolutely. You would just invite those two people, make it a Hangout on air, and anybody can watch, but only those two people can participate. Yep. Correct. I'll get into sort of some chat features and ways to interact in a second, but anybody can post comments. As long as you have a Google Plus profile, you have to be signed in. You can post comments below the Hangout on Google Plus. There is actually a chat feature in the Hangout itself that only the participants can see. And then there are other ways to curate comments from Twitter or Google Plus. Exactly. Hashtags. I can show you all that in a second. Yep. Yep. They don't need to call in. It's only if you want it. Let's say you're having a meeting or you just wanted to invite somebody who doesn't have a webcam or something, then they can join through phone. Yeah. No, no, no. There's no. It's just purely optional. Yeah, yeah. Yep. Correct. Yep. A Hangout on air means anybody can watch it. Yep. Yeah, you can use it as a marketing tool. I'll get into lots of examples. Yes, exactly. Everybody has great questions. Okay, give me a second. Let's see. Okay. All right. This is what we're going to go over in the next 52 minutes. We're going to talk about some advanced features of Hangouts on Air so you can really get off and running with this, because I think, you know, hopefully in the next little while you'll get the concept of starting a Hangout, but really what I want to get into is ways that you can use this as a marketing tool, use this as a communications tool, you know, create your own mini network, which is essentially what Hangouts on Air are able to do. How many people here know HuffPo Live, one of the media partners here at Social Media Week? If you haven't checked it out, it's almost built exclusively on doing Hangouts. It's at HuffPo Live. You can see that they are, let's just, actually I can jump out of the Hangout here for a second and show you what it looks like. So this is the HuffPo Live broadcast, live.huffingtonpost.com. They are basically bringing people into Hangouts throughout the course of the day. I've been lucky enough to be a guest at one point. And that's how people are able to join. You see, if you're somebody at home and you want to join in, you can actually offer to be part of the Hangout. Oh, well, we get to see that. They've got their own, yeah, they've got their own way of taking the Hangouts and putting it into their own sort of user experience. Yeah, absolutely, they've done all that. Do I need to turn on the audio? Let's give it a second. They were worried it was going to be too loud. No, it's fine. That's all right. Okay. In any case, hopefully, we'll come up in a second, see if they've got a Hangout going on. They may not. But it's basically an online network that brings people into the discussion through Hangouts throughout the course of the day. So if you want to see it in action, I would encourage you to check that out. There you go. So there's a Hangout that they've got going with people who joined in from wherever they are in the world, frankly. And the host, the anchor, and then she's interacting with them from the set with people who are in the Hangout. Great question. So, I mean, The HuffPo Live spends a lot of time pre-selecting people, ensuring that all of their gear works fine. You know, they treat it like a live interview where they pre-book somebody, they do a Q&A with them. Hopefully they're not going to do something crazy in the middle of a live conversation, but I don't know. Is there a delay with the HuffPo Live?
Yeah, the way they're doing, they're actually not doing Hangout on. They're actually doing regular Hangout to be recorded.
Right.
And then they take a few photos, they edit it however they need to, then pump it back out on their actual live.
So there is a bit of there's enough of a control built in for them, but conceivably if you were hosting a Hangout on air, it would be live, so there's a risk factor. Yeah. Potentially. I mean, I know that that would be of interest to people. For now, you can kick somebody out of the Hangout if they do something you don't want them to do. You've got controls over them, so yeah. We'll get into some best practices for production as you start to think about producing something a little higher end and building your own sort of network. Hopefully, if we can get some audio, I'll show you some other examples. And then we'll talk a little bit about analytics and tracking viewers and that kind of thing. And then we have our Hangout in a Box kit right here, where for about $500 or $600, you can put together a pretty robust, semi-professional, I would say, kit to do some pretty great Hangouts. And the Q&A portion, we've already reached that portion of the presentation. So I don't know, one of the things that I remind people, whenever you're doing a Hangout on air and you want people to know about it and you want them to come and watch, so one of the things that I did for today's Hangout on air is to create an event. So within Google+, you create an event, you give it a name, tell people the exact time. You can invite your circles, you can invite specific people, you can make it public. And so I just created this yesterday, and through the course of between yesterday and today, I've been getting people saying I'm going to be able to watch it or I'm not going to be able to watch it. And so it's a great way to know that this Hangout is happening. It will add it to your Google Calendar so people can remember. We'll give them a little reminder. I mean, all of this is great at just getting people to take time out of their day to watch whatever it is you're doing, which we know can be a lot to ask. But it's very easy to create. Events are within Google+. It's just down the left side of the nav bar when you're in Google+. Another tool to promote your Hangout is called Hype My Hangout. And if you go to it, that really is the site, Hype My Hangout. You go there, and it will walk you through step-by-step to create a 10 to 15-second video teaser or promotion of your Hangout. So you literally sit in front of your camera and say, hey, be sure to tune into my Hangout tomorrow at Social Media Week. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have these great people in the room asking great questions. We're going to talk about Hangouts and, you know, see you tomorrow. And then you get a video that you can share across social media. Yep. Hype My Hangout. Hype My Hangout. 10 people can join as participants, but a Hangout on air, anybody can watch it. I don't. I mean, President Obama just did a Hangout and it was a lot of people. So you get this video that you can share across social media to let people know this is happening. It's really short. Then you also get little GIF files. I think they're GIFs from your PDFs. And you can put those across your page if you want to. So if you come to your Google Plus profile, they'll actually see this as a banner across the top that says, tune into my Hangout at 12:30, you know, on Tuesday afternoon. So it can be a great way to just visually give people a cue and remind them that this is happening. And again, it's really easy to create all this stuff. It's free, and anybody can do it. Okay, within the Hangout experience, there's some settings to remember to make it really successful and great. And we're lucky to have some pretty steady Wi-Fi here. Nick is going to get more into sort of the technical specifications to really make it sort of a higher-end production process. But remembering to, you know, use a slightly different webcam, not just the camera that's on your computer necessarily. You know, checking the connection speed, all of this in advance to make sure that it works. And the same goes for all your participants, making sure that they understand the process. Because again, this is like hosting live television, and if you want to do this well, you really have to invest a little time in it to make it successful. You can actually check the connection speed. I would suggest that you set it to an auto connection speed so that it will find the best connection speed for you. You can do studio audio. We've had a lot of bands have great success doing Hangouts on air. they will actually perform for their fans through a Hangout experience, and people can come and watch them. And there are ways to maximize the music or the sort of stereo output from the audio within the Hangout settings. Jam sessions, yeah. And again, as long as there's no concern about copyright, but if it's a band playing their song, then it's fine. Yeah, oh yeah, we've seen artists sit there and draw. We've seen people have a simultaneous reading of something, or cooking shows. I mean, there are like lots of examples with this kind of stuff. There's also what's called the Hangout Toolbox. So there are apps within Hangouts that you can add. You just go in and add some apps when you're in the Hangout. And one of them is the Hangout Toolbox. And it will allow you to give people lower third fonting information along the bottom of their name. You can control a number of different things just to give it, again, a little more of a production value. You know, when people come to a Hangout, it's difficult to know who people are populating that film strip screen. So if you can give them a name card and their title, it's going to help as people are watching. Somebody asked about chat and the ability to curate chat. So within the Hangout Toolbox, you can actually say the hashtag for this Hangout is X, or in this case, if it's the hashtag SMW, and you can look for comments that are happening during the Hangout, bring those into the experience, really engage with people that way. And then, as I mentioned, there's a group chat tool that's just for the participants. Again, for those up to 10 people who are actually seeing in the Hangout themselves talking, they can message each other and say, I'm the moderator, Dave, next question's coming to you, here's just to let you know. And again, they're the only one that's going to see this on the right. And on the left here, that's what the sort of stream looks like for curating either Google Plus or Twitter hashtags that you can set up. I mentioned that you can share the Hangout in a number of different places. So if you do a Hangout on air, up at the top, you'll notice it says Start Broadcast, and then you also get this embed code. So if you want to put this on another site, this is an example of Anderson Cooper's show. We just recently did a Hangout with them. CNN.com embedded the Hangout at CNN.com, and so people were able to go there to watch it, not just on Anderson Cooper's Google Plus profile or page. It was there as well, but you get this YouTube embed code that's pretty straightforward to put on any site that you want. Speaking of YouTube, you can watch YouTube videos in Hangouts. It's got to be, there's sort of a process to it that's a little different. You have to all watch the same YouTube video at the same time, but you can be searching for different things on a playlist and then bring those into the Hangout. And it's also, as I say, it's broadcast here. This looks like I look like I've just been arrested or something, but I just want to point out that let's just say you want to do just yourself broadcasting in a Hangout. You don't want to have any guests. You're just doing almost like a podcast, or you want to talk to the camera or something. You can absolutely do that too. You don't have to have any guests. It used to look a little like this, where it would just be that one box down the bottom, which looks a little funky. I mean, what's that? Thank you. Creepy. Perfect. Yes. That's if you're just broadcasting by yourself. Like, you don't invite anybody, but you still want to have a Hangout on air that people can watch. An example might be, I used to cover technology for different news organizations, and if I was going to do a demo of a bunch of gadgets, I could be in front of the camera like, hey, check out the new phone from whoever, and do a little demo and record this show and then upload it to my site or something. Like, it's a mini production, right? It's also streamed live, but if you don't tell anybody about it, then it's it's not going to be seen. Or you can have it live too. Absolutely, you can do both. Yes. So, but one of the things I wanted to point out, you don't get this view anymore if you do a single person broadcast on YouTube. You just get a sort of more traditional look where it just looks like one person. There's no box down at the bottom. So again, you can just broadcast out whatever it is that you want. Yeah. You can set them to either place.
Okay, they can see it live.
Correct. And in fact, that's a great question, because within YouTube, you want to make sure that it's your featured video on your YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so within it's within the channel settings, and under tabs, it will ask you to, you want to uncheck this box. It says always take subscriber users to the feed, and that will put your Hangout into the main part of your YouTube channel so that people can see it in that kind of broadcast way. Again, just to remind folks who aren't as familiar with everything, we're talking about being able to see it on your Google Plus profile or page. That's one place people can go to watch it. Also on the corresponding YouTube channel. You've got to have both connected to the same account, but it's very possible. Correct. I mean, there's definitely a bridge between the two, but yes, the Google Plus Hangouts is being pushed to YouTube. And then you can also embed it anywhere across other sites, so then you've got a really big audience. Yep. Uh-huh. Well, a Hangout on air always goes to your YouTube channel. There's always a connection there, okay? So as soon as you start a Hangout on air, it basically triggers your YouTube channel to start broadcasting it as a live stream there and recording it to your YouTube channel as well. With me so far? Now, and anybody can see it, because once you enable a Hangout on air, it's public. There's no, well, I only want 25 certain people to see it. It's either private, like a closed Hangout, or it's broadcast as a Hangout on air, okay? So you can make it as publicized or not as you want. I mean, if you just want to do it and not have anybody watch, well, then you wouldn't tell anybody, but if you've got 1 million people following your page, like Anderson Cooper does, it's a little hard to keep it secret, right? So, yeah. We are all in Hangout on air, yes, yeah. At the moment, I don't know if we can hold this up, but...
Yeah, you can actually switch to...
Okay, I'll switch. I'll show you what people can see. We have a camera set up here that's showing the audience. So, but because I'm screen sharing my presentation, people who are watching are seeing the slides, whereas people who are, they can also see everybody down here. Correct. Yep.
So in your Hangout,
yep.
you see who's watching, or there are members of your,
You can't see exactly who is watching, but you can see the number of people who are watching. It does tell you at the top the number of people viewing in that live experience. And of course, if people are messaging and posting comments, then they can tell you the thing. Yep.
So can you, let's say you talk to them,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Create a hashtag that you can put across all of your, social media channels if you want to. Tell people to come, to the YouTube channel that you've got. Again, you can embed it on any other site. And we've seen, for example, the New York Times has put it on their main page right at the beginning of the New York Times. So you can promote it across lots of different places and steer people to the right spot. Yeah. Within YouTube, as with lots of other videos, you get some data on who was watching. One thing to remember when you're actually doing a Hangout on air, it will give you the view count, the live view count. When it gets uploaded to YouTube, it combines the live and the recorded views into one. But you do get to see that information. It gives you a little bit of more data, like when people started to drop off, or maybe you weren't saying something interesting. Sorry. Yep. Yep. Correct. Number of people who are currently watching it live. Yes. What happens is once it gets uploaded to YouTube, it starts to combine the after views or the recorded views with the live views. It doesn't retain the live views as a separate number. So I suppose if you were to look right after it got uploaded, you would know roughly how many people were watching live. But over time, it's going to just keep adding in both together. Yep. Yep. Correct. Yep. Yep. You also have the ability to do mobile. Sorry. Go ahead. Yes. Not right now, no. 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 They can just see those numbers during and then after. Yeah. Mobile. Should we do a mobile demo?
I've been having trouble getting on the network.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Well, what you can do is invite anybody on their mobile device to Hangout on Air. So, let's try it.
It's good shot.
Okay. So, to me, we deal a lot with the media. And there is a lot of interest in getting reporters in the field, for example, the ability to do to join a mobile hangout so that they could be in a story, show people what's going on, be reporting live and participate in that. And then, of course, it's recorded, so the media organization has that to use later. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh. What?
So that's the advertisement.
All right. Well, okay. In any case, mobile has a lot of potential for lots of reasons beyond just the media. But there are ways that you can experiment with this if it's a tablet device. Coming soon, hopefully, we've been talking about the ability, of course, to take this a step further and start a Hangout on Air from your device rather than just being able to join. I mean, I think we can all agree it'd be very cool if you could actually start broadcasting from your phone if you're out somewhere, not just join in remotely, which is still pretty cool. We've done a number of higher profile events with Hangouts during the conventions, for example. We built a Hangouts on Air studio. It was in a space about this size, actually. We had a desk set up. We had some screens. In this case, there are definitely some more production values going on, and of course, this all costs money. However, some of the things that, the lessons that we learned from this could be applied to anybody. The Washington Post, they really thought about the best type of guests, having engaging content, pre-vetting them, making them aware of what this experience was going to be like so they weren't confused. I'm in a box now, what do I do? The LA Times really brought some diversity to their Hangouts. They had some young voters and some women voters, and it was really great. And then the New York Times was doing some polling to track down which people might be interested to join their Hangout and where these issues might apply to them wherever they were. Here's a little bit sort of behind the scenes, what it looked like when we were doing some of this. So again, this is the other end of the spectrum in terms of producing higher-end Hangouts on Air. But what Nick is going to show you in a second can get you at least a really solid experience and can take you beyond, again, just that kind of blue hue that you get from staring at your screen and using the camera in your computer. We've seen some great use cases with the media in sort of maximizing why they would do a Hangout or Hangout on Air. The Economist used it to reveal their presidential endorsement. They took a moment to do that. If you want to see a brand that's using Google Plus Hangouts in a big way, Cadbury's in the UK, they do some great work with Hangouts. They bring in different guests. They make chocolate. They get a really big following. What's that? Oh, Cadbury, yeah. And so that can be a great example from a brand standpoint. There are lots of ways to think about growing your audience on Google Plus too. I mean, obviously you want to tap into as many folks as possible if you're doing this in a public and a sort of a broadcast way. So we give these kinds of tips to media all the time. Putting the word out across different platforms, asking you to follow us on Google Plus, linking your Google Plus page to your site. there's just a little bit of code that connects. It's like a bridge between your site where people can, click on the Google Plus button and they get taken to your Google Plus profile or your page. Authorship and search, if you're a journalist or a writer, or you have your own content out there and you want to connect it to your Google Plus profile, there's a way to do that. It takes a little time, but it's not that difficult, and it's available especially to writers or journalists. And then connecting Google Plus and YouTube, ensuring you have a YouTube channel set up that connects to your Google Plus profile, that will enable those Hangouts on air to happen. A few more programming sort of best practices. Telling people in advance, what is the conversation about? Here's how it's going to go. I think sometimes Hangouts can suffer from people just being confused. I mean, they're not sure how to get involved. They worry about talking over each other. Whereas a Hangout is really built to kind of sustain that conversation. It doesn't have to be like a CB radio conversation where it's, now I say this over and then somebody else talks. The more natural that you can make it, the better. That pre-production side where you think about, what's the space going to be, what are the lighting conditions, how do I get the best Wi-Fi or internet. We really encourage people to use a hardline internet if you can. Testing all of this out in advance with participants. And then, of course, all the pre-marketing, what you do during the day of the Hangout, hype my Hangout, sharing it across different pages. And then afterwards, there are a lot of things you can do to maximize that as well, and I'll get into those in a second. One of the tips, sort of a pro tip, is to create 2 circles of participants. So if you know circles within Google Plus, you can curate, friends and family members and so on. You can do the same thing for Hangouts. So you can create a circle for your Hangout of just the people you're going to invite. So let's say it's 6 people. You add them to your, Hangout circle, and then on the day of the Hangout, and the tip is to have 2, with 1 being your primary participants, and then another with some backup participants, people who may not be able to join or are on standby. If something goes wrong with somebody in your first circle, you can pull them in from the other one very easily and not worry so much that you're going to be stuck with nobody in your Hangout. There's a lot to be said for doing a dry run. We've seen, some of the best Hangouts. They almost go through everything. They simulate the right conditions, time of day. Any well-intentioned Hangout can be tripped up by somebody sitting in silhouette. Can't hear. I didn't have the plug-in. There are lots of things that can spoil what could otherwise be a great engagement experience. And again, I mentioned at the top, but explaining that the etiquette and the copyright side of things, and not saying anything that they maybe shouldn't, code of conduct and language, all that stuff. It sounds like common sense, but I can assure you this happens more than you would think with people who do production for a living. So you just have to think about these things a little bit in advance. That reminder can be so handy, just posting reminders so that people can watch. Inviting people into the Hangout, say 15 to 20 minutes before the scheduled start time so that they're up and ready to go, and then you hit that start broadcast button and then everybody can see it. Embedding or sharing the video link across different sites. You can embed it on other sites. You can also, your friends can reshare the Hangout to Google Plus. They just reshare it on their profile. Now you've got it across different profiles within Google Plus. And I've actually been encouraging people to think about, well, actually I'll get to this in a second. And then afterwards, so Face the Nation, CBS, venerable CBS show, which has been around since 1954. They did their first Google Plus Hangout back in April of 2012. And Bob Schieffer was right there with the program. This is one of the oldest shows on television, and they really got on board. They did a lot of great Hangouts with different participants during the election. And then what they were keen to do was to take about a minute or a minute and a half of, say, the 30-minute Hangout, edit it down afterwards in post, and then air that on television. So now they've got a Hangout that's happening online. They've got people joining in, having that conversation. They've got the recording on YouTube. It's just a file they can save and edit. They chop that down to a minute and a half, broadcast that show, promote the next one, and now they've got sort of a cycle going. So it was really great to see them doing that. These are some tips that, again, I think all too often people overlook and don't think about. just being timely and getting the word out in advance, educating people, replying when people are posting or they can't hear or something's happening, and then the idea of delight. I mean, I think all too often Hangouts can suffer from people sitting in front of a blank white wall with reasonable audio, but they're not doing anything. They're just a talking head. And my feeling, what I tell everybody who's producing a Hangout is, would you watch what you're producing? Think about the experience as a viewer, not just as somebody who's getting it to happen. If you wouldn't watch it, then why are you asking anybody else to watch? So, think a little creatively, look at doing a mobile Hangout in some way, get somebody in front of an interesting background. There's a fine line between controlling the experience and making sure everything works from a production standpoint and sucking all the life out of a Hangout and making it so sort of sterile and controlled that it feels too pre-produced and like there's no energy there. And I think everybody knows, if you're asking someone to sit on their computer and watch video, you've got to be dynamic, you've got to have something going on, you've got to hook them, or they're just going to go off and do something else. And I think the HuffPo Live works hard at doing that. I mean, they try to generate some really stimulating conversation, keep it moving. And here are some additional sort of pro tips. The first 30 seconds or a minute can be critical just to let people know, here's what we're doing, here's what we're going to talk about. Tune in because this is why it's worth your time. Ensuring that there are no copyright violations is, of course, a biggie. It can actually shut down your Hangout. You can get copyright strikes against your YouTube channel. There are lots of reasons to pay attention to it. Being quirky or different, don't be afraid to experiment with it. Being mobile and finding those interesting people. And then I always suggest consider going short. One of the beauties of the Hangout experience is that it can go on indefinitely. You can have a Hangout for an hour and a half, 2 hours. But what are you asking of people who are watching? That's a lot. Say, sit down and watch this for the next 90 minutes. People don't watch television shows necessarily for that long. So, thinking maybe let's do a Hangout for 15 minutes. The Anderson Cooper example, the one they just did, they told people at CNN.com, this Hangout's going to be at noon. It's going to go from 12 to 12:15, and then we're done. And they set it up with their audience so they knew we really have to tune in at noon if we want to watch this because it's going to be over in 15 minutes. I have yet to see what I would love to see somebody do is to actually put a timer on their Hangout or have it, you could even just put a little clock on a stand, put your tablet up there with a countdown clock, letting people know that it's going to end in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Why not? People might think, all right, there's going to be more energy here because every guest knows it's going to end and I better say something interesting. So thinking about the duration and the content and keeping that moving can be essential. Just quickly before we sort of turn the corner here, we have if I can give a shout out to our Google for Media Google Plus page. I would encourage you to check it out. We reshare a lot of examples of how the media are using Google Plus Hangouts. We share sometimes when it's happening live or afterwards. It also has other examples. We work across a number of different tools like Google Maps and Fusion tables and stuff, but we do focus quite a bit on Google Plus, so if you want to check that out and see some examples. We don't do it for brands, but I think there may be other channels within the Google Plus world that does, even like the official Google Plus channel, for example. And I'm just going to see, is there audio happening? Oh, why don't maybe because, you know what, I may have just muted it over here. Yeah, let's see. Okay. So this is the AC360 Google Plus page. Add us to your these are some examples of Hangouts that were done by the media recently. I'm going to just stop screen sharing the presentation. So here you go. Welcome to the AC360 Google Plus page. Add us to your circles so you can get the latest updates and behind-the-scenes footage. Show. We're going to be conducting Google Hangouts from time to time to connect people in every corner of the country to talk about topics related to campaign 2012. Tara, you're the reporter crowd. What is going on with religion these days?
We're talking about how religion is thriving in this new age, and I say it's actually thriving. I believe once you look at the New York Stock Exchange,
page. Big shout out to all my friends on Google Plus.
You beat that Saturday semifinals. They just kind of popped. Let me England play. It's like a roll game, especially. Popping all the way around. I thought the first game was totally entertaining. You got it all nuts.
That is very important to know. It's live at SMO and it's live via Google Plus with us right now because it's 2 gamers because there are live from the mask going up there. So if you talk to us live up there, George, what can you tell us?
There are 61 flights canceled.
We want to say thanks to everyone who was on our timer count today. We hope that you enjoyed your weekend. And Sarah Hill, thanks for joining us.
Just how many people know Sarah Hill? Has anyone ever come across her? She's since left this TV station that she was working at. She would actually be in a Hangout while live on television, so she would have one earpiece listening to the people in the Hangout and the other listening to her director while she was live on television. So during a commercial break, she would turn to be in the Hangout with all the people who were there, and then once that was over, she would be back live on television. So, Sarah Hill. Yep.
It's Kristen James' workout store in Brian.
Now it's CNN.
Google Plus Hangout for discussion of elections in your politics. So Emily, I think go to the next one, and your question is about the
If the Supreme Court rules that all or a portion of Obamacare is unconstitutional, are there any causes that President Obama could get on that decision?
I think whatever happens, it's probably not going to be determinative of this election. I think, though, there's benefit. I think the President Obama can have it.
Anybody that has Google Plus can use it. It's sort of the concept of a watch party at home when you're watching a speech on your phone, so you can use it for your laptop. So it was definitely the magic of technology made it happen, and you could bring people in to be able to talk about the issues that are driving the day.
I think this is going to be correct.
A couple more examples, one recently. This was one done by Sports Illustrated after the new cover.
Hi, welcome to Sports Illustrated since 2013 Google Plus Hangout. Thanks guys for joining us. I'm MJ Day, Sports Illustrated editor. I'm Kate Upton. I'm Kathleen Webb. And I'm Darcy Dowd, editor. Let's talk. Yeah.
Sounds good.
First of all, let's hang out about Valentine's Day. We all have mine's broken, but I kind of I wish you could like. Oh yeah, I know.
Are you gonna give a final rose to the winner of this hangout?
Yes. I'll give a virtual rose. Cool.
Perfect.
See, what I personally like about that Hangout is it does feel like it's a little loose, it's sort of dynamic. There isn't just a cut person to person. There's just some fun going on. I mean, you know, they just sort of let it go. Here, how many people saw the Obama Hangout that happened, or saw highlights, or heard about it? Okay. So this is a themed Hangout. We've been doing a number of these. We did one with Vice President Biden. These sort of the evolution of a fireside chat. So let's see what I mean here.
Hello everyone, my name is Steve Rowe and I'm the Community Partnership Team here for Google Plus in Mountain View, California. I'd like to welcome you to a very special fireside hangout with President Obama. President Royce is the Western Front Roosevelt there, and it's been a fireside chat tonight. Well, this is a new tradition this time for the President, a fireside hangout. This is actually the fourth year in a row after interviewing his answers to your questions, both on YouTube and here on Google Plus. Fittingly, the President is coming to us this year from the Roosevelt Room of the White House. Mr. President, welcome to Google Plus.
Great to talk to you, Steve. I have to admit, though, we do not have a fire going to Roosevelt. No, you might want to
you know, we also are joined on time Americans here, all the white states and other people. First, we're going to hear from Lee Doran. He is in Arlington, Virginia. He's a conservative online blogger. He is the president of popular YouTube channel called House of Liberty. Mr. President.
How do you speak?
John Green. John is the co.
So obviously this goes on for a while, but one of the things that Steve points out is that the White House did not know the questions in advance. I mean, it was a very sort of candid conversation, and as a result, there were some things that he said that did make news. He talked about drone strikes, talked about immigration, he talked about a number of things, and it was really interesting to see that kind of dynamic going on. So, yeah. Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, certainly, you know, we asked for a lot of questions to come in through YouTube, and we were looking for different people to participate, but especially in terms of a technical vetting process that was going on, you know, we wanted to make sure that they had the best internet connection and a, you know, good camera and all that stuff. So, yes. All right. Yeah. There are two things. The cameras move. It does. Yep. Exactly. It will look for the person who's talking the loudest. The moderator can also click on people's windows and do it manually if they want to. And in some cases, if this is like a totally highly produced back-end thing where we work with a third party, they can have some control over all that. But, yeah. Your equipment here? Yes, that's coming up next. Oh, I like the enthusiasm. Okay. So I am going to now turn it over to Nick and let him talk about Hangout in a box.
I'm just going to...
Yep, actually, let's go back to that. Yeah. Oh, fine. Yeah.
So if I still have battery power left on my computer, it's running a little low right now.
Go back up.
That one works. Yeah, you probably hear me. So while he's re-inviting me to Hangout, a lot of what I've been working with is working with media partners, big and small, in order to get them technically up to speed as possible with whatever kind of consumer products are available off the shelf at relatively inexpensive price ranges in order to get increased video quality, increased audio quality, and so on. And with that, one of the things that right off the bat will become very evident in a Hangout is the video quality experience. Now, there's laptops that are coming out now that have really good web cameras. The problem with a lot of them is that they have this kind of auto gain or auto contrast issue going on. So while you're in the middle of a Hangout, like you can see Daniel's face right now on that, he's using the web camera from his computer. And Macs actually have really nice web cameras, but what will oftentimes happen is when you move closer or further away from the screen, the actual wash from the light on the screen changes the appearance of your face, and then the camera is constantly trying to adapt to that, as Daniel is demonstrating very well. An enhanced camera, and I've gone through like dozens and dozens and dozens of these cameras. The Logitech C920, and we'll put a kind of cheat sheet with all these products. You don't have to madly scribble down a bunch of random product names. But the Logitech has a really good line of cameras. C920 and the C910, I think, are the two big ones. The only difference that I've been able to find out between the two of these, the only thing I've been able to find out between the two of these that's really different is on the bottom of the C920, it's got what's called a quarter 20 port on the bottom of it. So you can screw it into a tripod or a mount of some sort. And I've got a few different little holding mechanisms that I've tested out before. This one's really good, although it's slightly short for somebody that's my height. But if you're sitting down at a chair, or if you want to put it slightly further away from you, you're able to kind of tilt this. And if you go ahead and switch to the Logitech camera, we can
This is the settings control. Everybody see in the top right.
Yeah, if you go into the settings controller up here, you can actually change which camera is being used for the main camera. Right here, you're going to set Logitech. This one also includes a built-in microphone, which I found is slightly better than the built-in mics in laptops. So for you're a journalist, or if you're blogging from the field, from your apartment, or from a coffee shop, which I do a lot of work from, these cameras and these microphones tend to be quite a bit better than whatever's built in. They're not that expensive. For less than $100, you've got highly increased video capability. These actually have HD video quality, and the light here is probably blowing up slightly. The image, but as you can see, it has much wider field of view as well. So this is something to keep in mind if you're having more than one person in front of the camera that's going to be participating on stage or in the Hangout. But this is also really, really good for just home use as well. So if you have participants that you're bringing into your Hangout, you want to make sure they have good video quality. I would either give them this as an option. You can buy it at Best Buy. It's got any kind of electronics store that sells web cameras will have one of these. It's a Logitech, and I think the model name is a C920. And like I said, we'll post up a link to a bunch of different options for this. Aside from video quality, the next thing that you would want to consider, obviously, would be sound quality. What I have here is what's called a snowball microphone, but it's just one of many different examples that you can get. This is a USB microphone that just plugs into your computer via USB. It doesn't require any kind of firmware, any kind of downloads. It works on a PC and on a Mac. You literally just plug it right into a USB controller. Now you've got very, very high quality audio. The good thing about these microphones, and there's another one that the same company makes called the Yeti microphone. The thing I like about these in particular is it's got a setting switch on the back. And what this setting switch does is it changes the field of receptiveness of the microphone. So if it's just one person speaking, if it's just me participating in the Hangout, I'll leave it on setting 1. Setting 2 is slightly broader, so if you have a few different people in the room. And then the third switch to the very far left, it's a Snowball, is the name of the company. I'm sorry, Blue is the name of the company. Snowball is the model of the Blue. It has a really wide throw on it, so if it's more for like a conference room setting or something like that, this microphone does each one very, very well. And again, like I said, it just plugs right in. So at this point, you've already taken up 2 ports, USB ports on your computer. If you have a MacBook Air or something similar to that, you're pretty much maxed out at this point. But a USB hub that you can buy, again, those things are like 20 or 30 bucks. You can plug in many more peripheral devices, so if you have other things that you need to keep moving on or running on your laptop, you're not eating up all of your available ports with these particular devices. The last thing that I would also mention as well, because we're up on stage here, because they're live streaming, we've got these light panels increasing the lighting here, so we don't have these weird shadows underneath. Well, I hope not. So we don't have these weird shadows underneath our eyes and things like that coming from above lighting. There's a lot of different manufacturers that make a similar and smaller device. This is just one manufacturer. It's called Light Panels. These are really expensive, but these are the ones that I use for my home use. There's other ones that are much, much cheaper, and basically it's the number of LEDs that are in the unit kind of dictates how much they cost. But for about 40 or 50 bucks, you can get a pretty inexpensive one. This one's battery powered. As you can see, very similarly to this one, it has a pretty decent throw on it. So if I wanted to highlight Daniel's face and not be getting the light directly from the computer as my main light source, this instantly improves your light quality in a Hangout. This one's called Light Panels, is the name of the company. But as I said, that's more of a high-end production quality light source. Again, for 60 or 70 bucks or 40 or 50 bucks, you get a much, much smaller one. Gigabar is actually with Bed Bath & Beyond, a couple of LED desk lamps that he's kind of tilted towards himself. He has them on either side of his computer, and he turns those on every time he starts using a Hangout, and it works just fine. So it's just something to consider. Anytime you're bringing a participant into a Hangout, these are the things that you want to kind of go over with them. Most people don't really think about these things in the same terms that somebody that's producing a Hangout would. You're going to test out their audio quality, you're going to test out their video quality, you're going to test out their lighting. The last thing that you want to make sure that they have as well is some sort of headphone. I use earbuds just because they're slightly smaller and less conspicuous. I can kind of fit them back behind my ear and tuck them down behind my shirt. So it's not like these giant Star Wars looking headphones that I'm wearing. That'll help isolate sound. So whatever microphone that you're using, you're not going to get weird feedback, and you're not going to be hearing what you're saying on their Hangout. It's isolating the environment very well. How
about the handheld?
Yeah. The next thing up from that I would recommend as well is if you're going to try to start doing mobile Hangouts, and we'll talk a little bit about internet connectivity and things like that as well. This is a little, it's essentially what's called a Gorillapod, or like a pod where you can kind of like attach it to just about any kind of surface. You can loop these around pretty easily, but you can also use this as a handheld device. And something that I've been testing out, you can actually slide your phone right into this, and it automatically holds it for you. If you've got a forward-facing or rear-facing camera, you now have the option to use both of these as a way to broadcast from. So if you're in the field, you don't have a computer, you just want to do a really quick broadcast, or you want to do a really quick hangout, you can actually do these from your phone now. Now, the caveat to that...
Landscape is good.
Yeah, and thank you.
Yeah.
Landscape mode is preferable. Everyone, don't shoot your videos like this. Yeah. This is like a preferable way to hold the camera. But any kind of stabilization device, so you're not sitting there with your fingers and your hands trying to manipulate the screen and keeping your hands from touching it and things like that. Some sort of device like this. This was $20. I picked this up at B&H. The Eyes Stabilizer, I think is the brand. Eyes Stabilizer. But there's like dozens of different brands that are similar to this. You just look up like a cell phone tripod, I think what I searched for. I haven't found a really awesome tablet version yet where you can just stand it up, but there's a lot of cases that work pretty well. I've got a Nexus 7 tablet that I use, and there's a few different cases at the Kindle Fire, I think, is that right?
Yeah.
The Kindle Fire case actually works really well for it. It's got kind of a pop-up stand. You can just set it. You know, the only thing about that is that you're still not able to really hold it out away from you. If that's the case, I'm still looking for a really good option, which gives you a quarter 20 port where you can screw it into a tripod. I just haven't found that yet.
And we have been researching harnesses.
Yeah, same question with the tablet. I don't have anything that would hold something that big yet, but I'm really surprised if there isn't somebody out there that's already making one on the market, because I haven't found it.
We have been researching harnesses so that you could actually have something mounted.
I found a couple of, and they look super dorky, but I mean, I think if you're like running and gunning out in the field and you're running off of an iPad or something like that, they've got these units, which is essentially a soft case that has a strap that attaches to your neck, and then you can just hold it out from here. Even that little strap attached to this creates that stabilization, which will hold that unit much, much more stable. The last thing that I mentioned too, there are ways to get higher quality like line audio, XLR audio, or video into your Hangout. There's other USB devices. So if you're trying to get audio off of a board or off of, say, like a studio environment, a device similar to this, again, there's many different products, manufacturers that make these things, but essentially what you're looking for is a USB pre-unit. It has XLR inputs that allows you to take, a standard microphone input or a line from a camera into this and then port it into the Hangout. And it would show up in much the same way as Daniel selected the video earlier. If you go under the audio settings right here, underneath the settings menu, you would go under where it says audio. If you had this plugged into his computer, it would pop up as this brand name audio USB out. You could select that, and whatever audio you're feeding in at, now you've got that much better quality audio. So for those of you who are audiophiles or those of you who have a bit of knowledge about audio, XLR is almost always better than a non-balanced audio source, and I would recommend doing something like that if you had that kind of infrastructure. The last thing too, if you're trying to say get a camera similar to what he has, I think he's EX1 or something similar. If you want to get that video signal into a Hangout, that is also possible. There's a few different devices that are required in order to bring that signal down into a Hangout. And the big pitch to this is that the Hangout signal is an H.264 signal, but it's SD. So in order to get that camera into a Hangout, there's a couple different devices that you need in order to get that signal to the right format in order for it to show up as a camera feed. And if anybody's interested in knowing more about this kind of stuff, there's a few agencies that work in New York and California that do this thing. They do these things professionally. But if you want to do something that's more of a self-service type of a Hangout, I can walk you through some of the details of this. It's a little bit more of a higher level or advanced level experience. But it is very doable. The idea behind a lot of this is scale. If you were to start with just the Hangout experience using a regular laptop, preferably with a wired internet connection, moving up from there to enhance camera and sound and lighting, and then as Daniel was mentioning earlier, splitting the duties of the host of the Hangout and the engineer or producer of the Hangout into two different people is highly recommended. So if, say, Daniel and I were actually conducting this as a professional produced Hangout experience, he would probably be the host of the Hangout, interacting with the participants and doing all of that. I would join that Hangout as a ghost participant. And I would be the one that would be controlling, which audio is going next, and bringing up graphics, bringing up any kind of cues, or even pulling comments from the threads, so that all Daniel has to worry about is being handsome and being a talent on the Hangout. I can actually work to make sure that everything is going appropriately and that things aren't crashing or breaking. One last note, we just mentioned a little bit ago, we're all working off of the Wi-Fi here in the building, and there's like a bajillion people all trying to get on the Wi-Fi at the same time. A minute ago, we tried to join a Hangout via Wi-Fi, and the problem was I wasn't able to get connectivity with my tablet at that particular moment, so it just created this loop, and then it ended up crashing my Hangout on my app. The reason that is because the connectivity speeds of wireless internet is just not as stable or as constant as a LAN or an Ethernet internet connection. Which is why we always recommend going with a wired connection over a wireless connection. That's not to say that it's not possible. If you have a high-speed internet connection with really good Wi-Fi where you don't have like 15 different people all trying to watch YouTube videos at the same time, you could totally do it. I would recommend doing it for shorter periods of time until you've tested your internet connection to make sure that that Wi-Fi signal is strong and robust and that it would be able to host a Hangout for a longer period of time. I've also tested them on 3G and 4G, and they work really, really well. The key with it is, with any of this technology, before you go live with any of this, do run-throughs, test your technology, make sure that all of these things are working in that specific environment that you're going to be conducting the Hangout in. And then once you've got that stuff locked, just plan for a contingency in case that falls.
The idea of curating comments, I just created a hashtag, or looked at the hashtag of SMW13 within this Hangout Toolbox app over here. So here are comments that, these are people posting with that hashtag. So if you were in a Hangout, you created a hashtag around it, you could use the Hangout Toolbox to find those comments as they're coming in. But as Nick just alluded to, wearing all those hats at the same time, talking to people in a Hangout, making sure everything's working fine, looking for those comments. This is, there's a lot going on here for anybody. So just thinking in advance and making it more, of a seamless experience, having somebody to help you out can save a lot. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Hi, Jackson.
Yeah.
What extent of 16 to 24 Hangout?
The 16 to 24 demo?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I don't know that we've released demographic information like that. You mean age 16 to 24 people?
Yeah,
it's a great question. I really don't know. I mean, I think there are certainly higher profile Hangouts with rock stars. I think Taylor Swift has done some. So I mean, there's an audience for them. But in terms of what that crowd is doing to generate them, I just don't know. So you're talking about like embedding it elsewhere and that kind of thing, or I'm going to get this wrong because I haven't done a lot of experimentation with it, but I believe you could actually embed it in some ways in your Twitter feed. It is possible in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're using embed codes URL. For Twitter, URL embed tends to work best. It basically bounces you back to either your YouTube page or your Google Plus page. I've also embedded Hangouts in my Facebook feed. It works essentially the same way as if you're posting a regular video.
Like a YouTube video.
Like a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it'd be bringing people back to your YouTube page or your Google Plus page.
Yes. Conceivably.
Yeah. Yeah. That also works well. Also, if you have another website, a WordPress site, or something like that, if you just want to embed that video right in the site. You mentioned earlier there's a few different broadcast media partners that are doing that regularly.
Yeah. Yes.
So would it be real time? If you did embed the videos, or will it just be recorded?
It's live. I mean, you're embedding the live experience. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a question in the back.
Well, I mean, we've done a lot of high-profile Hangouts already, and you know, there are some great examples of celebrities and brands and media personalities. I mean, we do a lot of outreach more with the media side than with, you know, the celebrity side, for example, or brands. But you know, we go back and forth. In the beginning, I think we were sort of reaching out a lot to them. Now I feel like it's kind of turned the other way, where we get a lot of people asking us, how do we produce a bigger Hangout? You know, how do we kind of build on this?
I've been getting a lot of like people just saying, hey, we saw this really great Hangout by so-and-so, how do we do that?
Yeah.
And that's really how the conversation starts more than anything.
Honestly, we don't know of any relatively high-profile media, for example, who aren't on Google Plus and aren't doing something in a pretty big way, so it makes our lives easier. Yeah?
Hi, is it going to be posted live? I mean, sorry.
The video, yeah, we'll have to see how, I mean, right now it's being processed and recorded to my YouTube channel, so I will find a way to make it available somehow. I'll figure out a way to share it. If you add me on Google Plus, you can at least, I'll make it public on my YouTube channel, so at least you can go there and watch it. I know, I'm sure we're competing with all sorts of things. Yeah. So the answer is yes. I believe that we did one from Ghana that went fairly well. You know, yes, in developing countries it's going to be a little bit tricky. I was in Indonesia not that long ago, where internet connectivity, as you know, is kind of up and down, and depending on where you are, even Wi-Fi is kind of spotty at times. So, you know, you're going to be faced with those challenges in developing countries. There are ways to do a lower bandwidth type of a Hangout.
Yeah,
if we go, yeah.
Yeah, there's a few different options that have just recently become available where you can choose your lower bandwidth settings. So in developing countries where you know that there's going to be a connectivity issue, you can automatically set the bandwidth to be slightly lower. And what you're going to experience is the video quality will be degraded slightly. If it's a really low internet connection or a low speed connection, you can drop down to audio only as well. So if you have a participant that you know is in an area that has poor internet service, but you really want them to participate, there's still options for that. And as Daniel has mentioned, you know, it's somewhere between 3 megabits per second and 5 megabits per second is what is recommended for like a bare internet connection. The reason wireless is dicey is because it kind of fluctuates, but that's a good rule of thumb.
The materials you're going to post, is that going to be on the SMW side?
Well, actually, we didn't give out the email address. So we want to give out.
Yeah, not yet. If anybody has any questions or wants to find out a little bit more about anything we talked about today or any of the many different devices that we were kind of pointing at, you can reach out either to me or to Daniel or to a few other people on the team at mediatools@google.com. Mediatools@google.com. I have a few cards if anybody wants one. I can hand them out. We're available pretty much any time with for questions or troubleshooting. If you guys are conducting Hangouts yourselves, please let us know ahead of time so we can help you know, pay attention to them as possible. But most importantly, if you're innovating, if you have ideas about what you would like to do, I would really like to hear about them because it's all about what I'm working on.
Oh, I see, George. So we must be out of time, but thank you so much, everybody. It was a great conversation.